Welcome into Mississippi State Live here on the Voice of College Football. Andrew Miller joined by Christian Ballard here on a Monday evening. First time doing this show after a Mississippi State win for an SEC play. That is. Obviously, they won a few games. Bulldogs get their first conference win in, I think it was 742 days by defeating the Arkansas Razorbacks. It was their last SEC win came in that stadium. In a very different game. That game was a final score of 7-3, as opposed to this game that was a lot more high scoring, although still had plenty of ugly and weird moments. A 38-35 victory for the Bulldogs. But yeah, you snap the conference losing streak, 16 games. That is finished. And now State can move forward and they give themselves an opportunity to get to a bowl game. We're going to talk about maybe a little bit of that path to bowl eligibility here in just a second. Obviously, we'll get Christian's thoughts on the game. And we'll take a look at the Georgia Bulldogs, a huge game in Starkville this weekend, a big opportunity for Mississippi State against a top 5 team. I suppose we'll know the actual rank of Georgia here in just a few minutes as the college football playoff rankings reveal is going to be happening. I don't have that up. I've got the Arizona-Florida basketball game on TV because there's a good college.
Is it on tonight? I thought it was on tomorrow.
It's tomorrow night. Yeah, no, I saw they put out that stupid tweet of all of the committee members taking their hats off to go into the room and this performative BS about how important they are. And these people who have no idea about college football going and determining who gets to go play for the championship. I guess I got confused by that and thought they were making, for whatever reason, thought those decisions. That will be tomorrow night. So obviously we won't have a show. I guess we can talk about those rankings later in the week if that comes up whatsoever. So the next time we do the show, we'll officially know where Georgia lands in the playoff rankings. But wouldn't have mattered anyway because, like I said, I'm watching college basketball. Big game in Starkville, big opportunity for Mississippi State. We'll break it down here in just a sec. For those of you tuning in, if you could leave us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you were not already, turn that notification bell on so you do know when we do go live. And if you could share the stream, share the channel, tell people about us, we would certainly appreciate it. Christian, how was your weekend?
It was good. Really busy with work, but same stuff, different weekend type of deal for me. And I did watch some college football, not a whole lot. Obviously, my team, Alabama, on a bye. Got to see some highlights of Mississippi State. They looked pretty good against Arkansas. Not the best of performances. Found a way to win, and honestly, I'm just glad that happened. I'm just glad we didn't give it up. So, what amazes me, honestly, is going into the game, they favored the Razorbacks. I don't know who set that on ESPN Bet. I thought it was bogus, but I will say that, I don't know. We saw quite a bit from State in this game. I mean, Kamario Taylor got out there, had a couple good drives in the second half to put together some touchdowns. And, Blake Shapen looked all right in the game, too. I thought everyone looked really good. I just think, obviously you take away from this game that the defense has to come together going into Georgia.
Yeah, you definitely need a little bit more to the defense especially from a run defense standpoint. And that'll be a big key when we talk about facing Georgia. But it's also a defense that continues to step up in the moment when you need them to. And in the fourth quarter, when they had to get stops, they found ways to get stops and get them off the field. And that allowed State to ultimately come back and win the game. I think the point spread was fair. And to be honest, if you look at how the game played out, Arkansas had, I don't think it was 100 more yards, but they finished with a much higher yardage total. I know they won the success rate battle. Post-game win expectancy from Bill Connolly was at about 27% for Mississippi State. State was a little bit lucky, to be honest, to get the win. And part of that, when Arkansas commits 19 penalties, that's a big reason why. Or 18, 19, whatever the number was, for over 190 yards. As I talked about in the post-game, I don't think it was a case of Arkansas getting screwed over by the refs by any means. I think, yes, there were a couple calls that I thought were ticky-tack. By and large, it was Arkansas being undisciplined. Like, those penalties were legitimate. They made a bunch of terrible, stupid mistakes, and that cost their team, and that is why they lost the football game. They can be mad and blame the refs, but if they play cleaner and don't have the boneheaded mistakes that they did, they probably walk away and get the win. So it's a weird game where I don't think anyone is going to be, as a State fan, walking away from this and being, negative about it from the perspective of, oh my God, we shouldn't have won that game. This team still sucks. No, I think everyone, when you've gone on losing the way State has for so long, you're just going to be happy with the win. That said, you can look at it and say, hey, they still have a lot of things that got to get cleaned up. Like, that performance going forward probably is not one where you can be super thrilled and think if they play the way they did on Saturday, that means they're going to be able to win against other opponents. It was kind of a case of, for the first time all year, Mississippi State did not beat themselves. Arkansas is another team that has found ways to lose games. They have another team that has found ways to make crucial mistakes and moments that ultimately cost them. And Arkansas continued to do that in that game, whereas Mississippi State, for again, like the first time this season, did not make those mistakes. They made sure to take care of the football. I mean, there was the one turnover, but they didn't commit a bunch of dumb penalties. They didn't have just blown, busted assignments. They were not missing opportunities offensively in the way they have in other games. They played as clean as they have all year and allowed them to win the game. And that's going to be one of the big things for them to build off of. And if there is a positive spin that we had, I think the biggest thing by far is just the idea of, you finally got a win. What does that do for your psyche moving forward? Are you able to go out and have a level of confidence going into these other games that you're going to be able to find a way to get it done and have the belief that, no, we're coming out and we're going to be able to win football games? And look, I do think there's something to be said. You're sitting here with 3 weeks to go, one win away from bowl eligibility, as that's going to be the thing we get to next. I don't know the stat on it, but I do know, listening to the Cover 3 podcast, something those guys have brought up quite a bit is that, because they'll do their preseason win total picks, and something they look at frequently is if you have a team that's preseason win total is 5.5, there's a tendency for those teams to go over, because a lot of teams that, if a team has 5 wins late in the year, that team tends to find a way to get to 6, because making bowl games still matters to a lot of programs. There tends to be a rallying around the idea of, hey, man, we can get to a bowl, right? We can do that. And I think for Mississippi State, that can be something that is a rallying point for them for sure, is having that opportunity to become bowl eligible for the first time since 2022. And it doesn't matter where you go, doesn't matter who you're playing. Just getting the chance to go be in a bowl game, the 15 extra bowl practices, right? That's another huge thing for a team that's continuing to grow. And you look at young guys that maybe you're hoping the opportunity to get on the field next year, you get those reps and time with them. So all the focus goes forward into, how do you turn this into being a bowl team? And, in terms of final takeaways from the win against Arkansas, you got the win. So it's, how do you build off that? Can you keep that momentum going? Can you find a way to get bowl eligible? Can you continue to play clean? Can you look at that performance and say, okay, this wasn't just a one-off. We're going to continue to be a team that takes care of the football. We're going to be a team that continues to convert big moments. Trey Clark coming in with a good point. State was 3 of 4 on fourth down, and all 3 conversions came on touchdown drives, first drive and last drive. Absolutely. Like, when they had to make plays to get it done, they did. And seeing them be clutch, frankly. And that's the other big thing. And it's not just because we go back and look at those plays, like Brennan Thompson making a remarkable catch down the sidelines to convert on a fourth down. Anthony Evans obviously making a play to, one, make sure he got the first down, and then making sure he got into the end zone. The pass rush stepping up at the end when it's like, okay, game on the line. We've got the lead. How do we not blow this here? Pass rush steps up and gets after Taylor Green. Having those big moments and converting in key moments, that is a huge thing for this team. That is something you can build off of for sure, is having that momentum or creating momentum because you were able to be clutch in key moments. You were a clean team. You were a clutch team. Did you play the best in terms of execution throughout? Not necessarily. But they've had games where they've executed decently well, and it didn't matter because they screwed it up and found ways to get in their own way. So I think you take that away for sure, and you try to build off that going forward.
Yeah, I mean, this Arkansas win is a momentum builder for sure. I mean, and I feel like it's weird to say that because it's Arkansas, but it really is considering the start we've had in SEC play and the close calls we've had. To see that we can finally do it, and you had mentioned it had been 2 or 3 years since we won an SEC game. Um, Now granted, I don't like the fact that the first one had to come against a really down bad team in Arkansas who's 2-7 now. But however it happened, it happened. And now you got to look forward to a home game this weekend against the other Bulldogs in Georgia. And then you have who else we got coming up? I know we got the Egg Bowl,
Missouri.
Missouri. Yeah, Missouri. Of course, that's on the road. You got 3 tough challenges ahead. It is very likely that State loses out. Or I say likely. I'll say it's possible. I don't know if it's likely. I feel like they could get a win somewhere. But it's, at the same time, that's a stretch, man. But you showed this past weekend you could do it. You played close games with Florida, with Tennessee, and with Texas. You said, we're so close. We're like right there. And it took you getting Arkansas to do it. Now, at home with Georgia this week, can you at least keep it competitive? I think that's a big, big thing.
Yeah, and you talk about the win coming against Arkansas. You would have liked to have seen it against a better team. Sure, and I don't disagree. Like Florida's obviously not a great team, but they're better than Arkansas, I would say. Frankly, those teams are pretty comparable, if we're being completely honest. And the Gators are better; they've won more games, but the idea of being a talented enough team to be in every single game they play, but being flawed enough to not be able to find ways to win. Obviously, 2 teams that fired their coaches. They're very similar opponents ultimately. But yeah, you could have beaten Tennessee. You could have beaten Texas. Those would have been much better wins. But I think there is something to be said for a growing team in Mississippi State that is clearly still building. It makes a lot of sense that the first win came against it. Okay, it's like, hey, this is a team that's not great. This is a team that finds ways to lose football games. Can you, as the team that is on the come up, be the one that gets it done? And Mississippi State did. And this is one of those things I've talked about so much this year. And it goes back to the point of playing clean, which I know I've said so many times now already. But what I talked about with the Tennessee game, what I talked about with the Florida game, the Texas game, Mississippi State was not a good enough team to be able to win football games while making mistakes. Because even if their opponent makes mistakes, a lot of these other teams are better. They have more talent. And they're teams that can get – if both sides make mistakes, then it kind of balances out in the end. And the better team just finds a way to get it done. Mississippi State against Arkansas, who from a talent perspective, probably a pretty evenly matched opponent, one team made a bunch of mistakes, one team did not. The team that didn't make the mistakes came out with the win, and this time it was Mississippi State, which is really big for them. And taking that next step of just, hey, we found a way to get it done. Even if it's a team that's not great, we were the better team on that day when it was all said and done because we played better football ultimately. And yeah, Trey points out Arkansas is not a horrible team. They're not. Like offensively, they are genuinely good. Like they are genuinely a very good
team
offense.
with a bad. They're a good team with a bad record. Is all it is. Give them credit. Tough schedules, right?
I will say
terrible. They have no defense. I will say that they have no defense, but that offense can click and get it.
No, it can. I will say Arkansas is a bad team, and what I mean by that is, and record is not everything, and that is a problem. Sometimes people do. It kind of goes 2 ways. On the one hand, some people do genuinely get caught up with this idea of your record just is who you are. And if you lost X number of games, well, you're a bad team because you lost X number of games. That's not fully accurate. Some people take it a little bit too far, and I referenced this earlier in the season. There was like the 2021 Nebraska team, where the 2021 Nebraska team, I think it was 21. It was either 21 or 22 with Scott Frost. It was the year before he got fired. They went 3-9, and they finished the year with like a positive point differential because every single one of their losses was by one score. It's like they had a bunch of blowout. Their 3 wins were blowouts, and then they lost close week after week after week. And every single week they lost in like a more gut-wrenching way. It was every single week they lost in the most, painful way imaginable. And there was all this talk about, man, Nebraska's really not a bad team. They're just so close. They're so good. And the guy who made the point I liked the most was Dan Rubenstein of the Solid Verbal. And what Dan said is, no, they are a bad team because they continue to find ways to lose, which is what bad teams do. It's like, I don't care that they're close every single week. I don't care that on paper the analytics and the stats say, well, actually they grade out like a team that should probably win 7 games or whatever. They find ways to lose because they're a bad football team. And I think Arkansas, it applies in the same way. Trey, bringing up that Arkansas 0-5 in one-score games, whereas we were 2-3 and Ole Miss is 5-1. Yeah, Ole Miss has had really good close game luck. State's been kind of on both sides of it now. Arkansas has been a bit unlucky. And I'm not trying to say Arkansas is not – I won't say Arkansas is horrible. I will still say Arkansas is a bad football team because Arkansas finds ways to lose games. Another point from Trey. It really feels like we are in every game, and whether we win or lose will depend on if we make plays late. Sure, no, that's going to apply the rest of the way. I don't think they're going to get blown out. I would be shocked if they were blown out in these games down the stretch. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but they're going to be competitive. This is a team that finds ways to play close games, and you're hoping that it continues to turn in State's favor, that enough of the breaks fall their way. But some of that is about making breaks fall your way, and that's kind of the other point is you want to win close games, don't make dumb mistakes. Have guys step up in big moments. Mississippi State was not getting that against Tennessee, against Florida, against Texas. They got it against Arizona State. When State had to step up in that game and get a stop on the goal line and then get a game-winning touchdown, Mississippi State stepped up and got it done. They got it against Arkansas. When the defense had to get stops at the end of the game, when the offense had to put together drives and go get in the end zone and convert on 4th downs, they went and did it. Winning in close games comes down to making plays in clutch plays in key moments. Mississippi State finally figured out how to do that. Can you do it again? Because you're going to have to. You're not going to win easily against Georgia. Even if Missouri, with the quarterback situation being what it is, you're not going to win easily in that game on the road. Certainly not going to win easily in the Egg Bowl. Any of those games, in order to get a win, it's going to be close. It's going to be competitive. You're going to have to find ways to make plays late. That is where what you did against Arkansas, I hope you can build off that and keep that going moving forward. Let's talk a little bit about that path through the bowl game. So you have 3 games left. And as you just mentioned a few minutes ago, you could easily lose all 3 of these games. State is about a touchdown underdog to Georgia, I believe is what I initially saw. Probably be similar on the road at Missouri. And I'd imagine in the Egg Bowl at home, it'll be about the same. I don't think there'll be a massive underdog in any of those games, but the other teams are favored by quite a bit. And I was looking at the ESPN FPI projections. It's about all those teams are favored between like 70, 75% against Mississippi State in terms of the likelihood of winning those ball games, which means if you add up, what is FPI saying the chances of Mississippi State are of winning a game down the stretch? If you take the percentages, it comes out to, I had it on my phone, 72.4%. Basically, Mississippi State has a 72% chance of getting 1 win in the final 3 games, according to ESPN FPI. That doesn't mean they're going to do it. That doesn't mean they won't do it. It's just that's going off of one metric, just to give it an idea. So it's not even a case of where odds are better than not that they win one. It's kind of like, they might get one. it's going to be a difficult stretch the rest of the way. Those are three good football teams, even Missouri having the flaws that they do. But they're all teams that are beatable. Georgia, as we'll get into more deeply in the preview in a sec, like Georgia's been in some tight games. They were in a tight game with Auburn. They were in a tight game with Florida, two teams that are obviously severely flawed, and both are going to have new head coaches. Really probably should have lost to Tennessee. Potentially should have lost to Ole Miss. And I know those are better teams than Mississippi State, but Mississippi State went head-to-head with Tennessee. Like, we've seen the Bulldogs be in a tight game against an opponent of that caliber. Like, Georgia is not the same dominant force we're used to. Missouri offensively has not been very good, and now it's a third-string quarterback who they're going to be playing more than likely when Mississippi State comes to town. Now, their defense is pretty good, but teams have found some ways to move the football against them. You got to go on the road, but Missouri's not a dominant team. And then the Egg Bowl is the Egg Bowl. And Ole Miss is also, they were in a tight one with South Carolina later in the game. It was not that great of a team. They were in a tight game with Washington State. Like, it's not like Ole Miss is dominant by any means either. You're going to have opportunities. And, Christian, I'll turn it over to you now. Of those three games, which do you think is the most likely that Mississippi State is able to get?
It's crazy because it is hard to pick, because I do think each of these three teams are better than Mississippi State. You get the advantage, though, of having Georgia and Ole Miss, who I think in that order are the two toughest games. You get both of those at home. They're both noon kickoffs. You got the Egg Bowl on Black Friday. You got this week, you got the noon kickoff with Georgia. Missouri's on the road. Not that you can't get that, but I'm gonna boil it down and say we get the Egg Bowl, or at least that would be the easiest, just because Missouri's on the road and because Georgia is Georgia. Even though they haven't looked like that team this year, they're still really dominant, and Kirby's always cooking up a good plan in the SEC to always find ways to dominate and win football games. And I always feel like Kirby gets it done around November. Like, he just finds a way to just pull it together, get it taken care of, and get ready for when they go to Atlanta in December, pending they should make the SEC title. So, with that being said, even though it is a rivalry game, it is at home. I'm going to say the Egg Bowl with Ole Miss is probably the most likely to get the 6th win.
I'm going to go with Missouri. I think Mizzou, I'm just kind of playing the odds of, even though that game's on the road, I think they are the most flawed of those three teams for sure. I think the Missouri offense right now, I will say what does worry me is Mississippi State's run defense has not been great. They are now in games against power conference competition. They are last in the SEC in run defense now. They surpassed Arkansas because they're not able to run the ball against Arkansas, which was so weird.
Yeah.
Mizzou's a team that runs the football really well. Ahmad Hardy, a very good player. But I will say it's a little bit tougher to run the ball when everybody just expects you're just going to run the ball. And at this point, that's what you're going to sell out to stop when you face Mizzou because, again, they're on a backup quarterback. You don't trust them to be able to make plays through the air. And I think it was even with Bo Perbula in the game, teams kind of started to see that, if you force them to have to throw it a little bit, like they're really not built to handle that. And I'm just curious. I mean, the quarterback, Matt Zollers, I mean, he's really not much of a runner either. Like, that's not really a big part of his game, to be completely honest. So, like, yeah, Ahmad Hardy is outstanding. Jamal Roberts is a really good back as well. But they're going to be a little bit more one-dimensional than maybe they even have been. And, look, their defense is scary. The pass rush is very good. That's a team that is getting, 2.9 sacks a game. Have a couple guys off the end, and Damon Wilson and Zion Young who can get after you for sure. That's a concern for Mississippi State, no doubt about it. But the last few games, teams have been able to run on Mizzou a little bit. They have had some moments in the secondary where you can kind of get some lapses, and I think Shapen playing better as of late gives me more confidence about what you can do in the passing game. I think he's starting to get into a little bit of a groove. I think they're a team that if you can hold up just enough, State might be able to figure something out offensively. And I even go back to a year ago with Missouri, a better Mizzou defense than this one. State moved the ball in that game, and they just made some mistakes early, but State had some opportunities in that game, and I think they kind of had some of the same opportunities in this one. And again, I think their offense is a lot easier to handle. So I think Missouri, from a team makeup, it makes more sense. But also, Missouri this week, they host Texas A&M, which is a massive game for them in terms of their hopes of being able to close out the year. And then the week after they play Mississippi State, they go on the road to Oklahoma for a rivalry game that they care a ton about. It's kind of a letdown spot for Mizzou. Like, it kind of feels like this could be a situation where it starts to spiral a little bit for them. So we'll see. But I like State's chances against Missouri. Now, look, to your point about the Egg Bowl, the Ole Miss defense does not scare me whatsoever. And Ole Miss offensively, for as much of a problem as that is, State, for whatever reason, shows up in that game on defense. And they have found ways, including last year. Like, they held Ole Miss to 26 points last year in Oxford. And the defense played better than that. It was a couple busted plays, and that was it. And you're a better defensive team this year. And that was an Ole Miss team that was more talented, I think, offensively, top to bottom. In the game in Starkville, for sure, you got a chance. But I will say, they're still a good team, better team than Mizzou. So I'll take Mizzou as the most likely. But it feels like State's got a good chance. And if they can get one, bowl projections rolling out that I've seen one that's got the Texas Bowl. I've seen Liberty Bowl. I've seen not Belk Bowl, but Birmingham Bowl, which, hey, man, I think I said it earlier in the year. I'd kill for a Birmingham Bowl right now. Like, a 6-6 season and going to Birmingham is not the worst thing in the world. It's something you can build off of. For sure. That is everything. The goal now is get to 6. And it was the goal that was set after you beat Arizona State. I talked about after that game how expectations were raised because you got that win. When you beat that Arizona State team, you know you're going to be 4-0 because of the games you had following. You just showed you have the ability to go up against a good team in Arizona State. You should expect to be able to find a couple SEC wins. You finally got one. There's been a lot of heartbreak, a lot of frustration, a lot of anger on my end for sure, and meltdown. You got an opportunity to get one more. And if you do that, and it's a bowl game, even with everything that they went through this year, I will look at it and say, hey, that was an awesome, awesome year, all things considered. They can continue laying a foundation, building off of it. But you're gonna have to make it happen. You're going to have to go, again, to hit it again. You got to play clean the rest of the way, and you got to be able to build some momentum down the stretch and take advantage of the fact that, hey, we came up big in clutch situations. We're going to have to do it again going forward. It's going to take a really clean game and some big clutch moments if you're going to be able to beat the Georgia Bulldogs. Obviously, one of the better teams that Mississippi State is going to face without question this season. The number 5 team in the country currently, and a team that has only lost once, a 3-point loss at home to Alabama. They got down big in that game, but came back and were in it, late in the fourth quarter. Bama was able to make the plays to put it away. Kind of a Georgia team that does not look as impressive as everyone has expected, but they still find ways to win. They found a way to win at Tennessee. They found a way to win against Auburn. They found a way against Ole Miss. They found a way against Florida. And I think they've been trailing in a lot of these games at halftime. That's the other thing. Is like every single week they're down at the half, and they just in the fourth quarter, second half, everything clicks for them, and they find a way. You want to talk about a team that is clutch? Georgia is clutch. And I think everything I just talked about don't beat yourself and then make the key plays in key moments. This Georgia team, I think, really is a prime example of that. It's not that they do anything all that sexy. It's that they find ways to step up in big moments. Now, there was one game where they weren't able to ultimately step up, and that was against Christian's Alabama team. Christian, just going back to that game, we don't have to look at it from like, what did Bama do, but more just what did you see from Georgia in that ball game, or what have you seen from them overall? Because I know you've watched them beyond that game as well.
I think they're a good team. I mean, this was, I think in that game specifically, being at home, obviously you got the home crowd behind you, so that helps. They were able they were able to play not a four-quarter defense, but at least a second half defense. And it looked like for a little while they were crawling back, but they didn't have enough left in the tank to get the job done. They shut Alabama down in that second half. It was 24-14 in that game at halftime. Alabama was up by 10. Georgia lost by basically a field goal. Not literally, but I mean 3 points. They were favored by 2.5. They they committed penalties that kind of killed them in this game. Alabama had more time of possession, more yardage, didn't turn the ball over. Georgia, I believe, had one what like a fumble recovery, or maybe it was like they couldn't get the fourth. I don't remember what the turnover was, but overall, man, they got some second half momentum, but they didn't have enough to basically come back and win the whole thing. And that's really what it is. You have to, if you're Mississippi State, how do you get past Georgia? You have to get off to a big start. And I think especially with defense, like you got to force Gunnar Stockton to make mistakes. I mean, we talk about Carson Beck and his interceptions for Georgia last year. Gunnar Stockton, it's not really. Let me see how to put it. He's not turning the ball over like Carson Beck did. However, he can look pedestrian at times and make the wrong decisions and not convert when he needs to, or make the right throws, or force him to run. He's not the most mobile quarterback, whatever. So I guess just having the right mindset going into this game if you're Mississippi State, kind of like what Alabama had. I mean, you talk about Alabama was able to win that on the road. Not a lot of people picked Alabama to go into Athens and win. A lot of people were looking at Georgia. And I know it might be crazy to hear that because Alabama just keeps winning and winning against the Dogs. But didn't that snap like a home win streak for Georgia going back to like 2019? I mean, it happened. They got it done. So that's really all I have to say on Alabama's side of things. They just, the defense showed up when it mattered, and offense was able to put big plays on the field.
For sure. They found a way to get it done and stepped up at the end to hold off the comeback. It's kind of, again, the one team that when Georgia sort of had that second half surge, they found a way to stop them. We'll take a little bit of a closer look at the Bulldogs. Offensively, 32.5 points per game, and we have seen that in conference play as well. They 41 on Tennessee, 35 on Kentucky, which is not impressive, but it's Kentucky. 43 on Ole Miss, 24 on Florida, 20 on Auburn. So, I mean, against the better defenses, obviously, 21 on Alabama. Not been as much, but they've taken advantage of teams that have struggled defensively for sure, been able to find ways to put quite a few points on the board. They have easily been at their best when they've been able to run the football effectively. On the season, averaging 184 yards. It's been a bit up and down, their rushing attack. But really, it was only the Auburn game is kind of the only one time that they really didn't run the ball that well. Florida held them in check mostly. But they've had a few guys step up. Chauncey Bowens, as a freshman, has really impressed. He's leading the way with 446 yards, 5.7 a carry, 5 touchdowns. Has really had some big games these last few weeks. Nate Frazier is sort of the guy that has been established there. 394 and 2 touchdowns, but it has not been a big runner for them in terms of high yard per carry, just sort of been a guy just sort of churning up yards. Stockton, is a part of the run game. 290 yards, over 4 yards a carry, 7 touchdowns. So that is a threat dealing with his legs. Not the explosive runner of, you just saw it with Taylor Green and having to deal with him. It's not quite the same situation there, but a guy who, especially down in the red zone, can get involved and you have to think about. So they've got talent in the backfield. It's not any one-man show, but they've got guys who can go, and an offensive line that does a pretty good job of blocking it up front. In the passing game, Stockton, you kind of talked about, he's not been like crazy overly impressive, but he's just been solid. He's completing 70% of his passes, 222 yards a game, 12 touchdowns. He's only thrown 2 picks. Under 8 yards per attempt. It's not been pushing the ball down the field. He's had a couple of the big throws. I know everybody remembers the big 4th down conversion against Tennessee late in that game that goes for a touchdown. He can push the ball down the field and can be accurate, but mostly it's a lot of underneath passing, kind of getting the ball to guys in space. That's sort of their idea, is we're just going to work our way methodically down the field, and they do it really well. And so a lot of that comes down to being able to get run after catch. And Zach Branch at receiver is one of the best guys in the country at doing that. Explosive player in the slot, 45 catches for 474, 2 touchdowns to lead the way, and has really emerged over these last few weeks, especially. You look at the first, 5 games of the season, his highest total was 5 catches for 69 yards. The last 3 games, 9 for 57, 8 for 71, and then 10 for 112 against Florida, coming off the best game of his season. Really impressive year for him to this point, and has become a bigger and bigger weapon. That's someone that, playing in the slot, that means state safeties and are going to have to step up, because obviously Kelly Jones is going to be on the outside. So, we'll see. Jerron Manning, don't know if he's going to be back in this game or not. You had a good game out of Isaac Smith against Arkansas. Going to need a good performance out of those guys once again. Brylan Lanier, I think, would be someone that you would expect to play a lot of coverage against Zach Branch as sort of one of your nickel guys. They're going to have to deal with him quite a bit. They're going to have to handle him. Colby Young had sort of been the other guy. He got hurt against Ole Miss and missed last week. One of their more big play receivers down the field. Probably not going to play against State. We'll see on the injury report when that does come out in a couple of days. Dylan Bell is a guy they've had around, kind of just a consistent, solid player for them. London Humphreys has emerged a little bit. And look, they've got good tight ends, right? Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky, really good players, even if they're not getting featured quite as much as they probably like. Noah Thomas is another guy to watch for. He was supposed to be a big transfer for them this year in the receiving corps. Hasn't really done much of anything, but he did have a 22-yard touchdown last week against Florida. So could see his role expand a little bit more. They've got a good collection of weapons. Maybe not a ton of star power, but this is probably as good a top-to-bottom skill group as Georgia's had in a long time. This is an offense that can be effective. Now, they don't hit a ton of big plays. It's not that they're all that flashy in what they do, but they're excellent on third downs, convert at about 47% clip. Really, it's more solid, but they're good on third down. They're excellent in the red zone. On the season, they're scoring 88% in the red zone with a 76% touchdown rate. Both really good, both towards the top of the SEC. Again, they're very much more methodical with what they do offensively, but they find ways to punch it in the end zone. If you're Mississippi State, I think a lot of it is, can you hold in the red zone? Can you get those key stops? They don't give up a ton of pressure, right? It's nothing sexy, but it's finding ways to they're just a team that is consistent and moves forward and finds ways to get it in the end zone. If you're State, I think you're really going to have to step up and find a way to get them off balance as much as possible.
Yeah, I feel like there's obviously been some good things about State's defense this year. We've had some picks, had some sacks, getting after the quarterback and everything. What we're good at, Georgia offensively, in a way I put this, is good at defending the defense. And what Mississippi State's probably going to want to do in this game. Georgia's offense, man, just the offensive line was an issue going into the season, from what I had heard from like some of the Georgia fans I follow and Georgia experts and everything. It's looked pretty solid this year. Obviously, you got the receivers; they've looked really good. You got 2 guys over 300 yards, one even over 400 yards, and Zachariah Branch, of course. Um, but you can spread the ball out quite a bit. You can stretch the field. That's something that if you're Mississippi State, you need to do a good job of preventing that from happening. Otherwise, Georgia's offense is just going to have a field day with you this week.
Yeah, no, I think limiting them is going to be the big key. I think limiting the ground game is a big part of it. Again, their offense has been at their best when they've been able to run the football, and that's a concern for State, knowing how State's run defenses look. But they're really going to have to be able to limit what Georgia's able to do on the ground. Other side of the ball, we're so used to dominance, and it's just not that this year for Georgia. 19.6 points per game allowed, giving up 309 yards per game. Still very good. Perfectly acceptable numbers in this day and age of college football, and they've found ways to get it done for the most part throughout the season. But they give up 41 to Tennessee. They give up 35 to Ole Miss. Now, those are really the two games. Other than that, they've played pretty strong defensively and done more than enough. But it's interesting that the two teams that run offenses that are similar to Mississippi State were able to have a lot of success in terms of putting points on the board. And obviously Alabama in the first half had little issue being able to move the football against Georgia. Now, look, this team is great at defending the run. Only giving up 94 rushing yards a game. Really, only one team has run it all that effectively, and it was Auburn. And it was really just one half that Auburn ran it well. And once Kirby adjusted that, I mean, that's, man, the other big thing with Georgia is you look at so many of these games, and it's like the second half adjustments on what they do defensively, where it's like, okay, we're going to get down, and then we'll figure out what you're doing that works, and we're just going to stop it. You know, Tennessee ran for 125, but it was a lot of getting held in check. They didn't give up a lot of big runs. Again, they shut down the Ole Miss run game. Florida was able to have some success on the ground, but that's a really good offensive line, really good running back, but they weren't able to really plow it ahead. So the run game and being able to limit what opponents have done, Georgia's been great at that. Pass defense has been solid as well. It doesn't jump off the page in terms of what they've done to this point. But overall, it's been really solid for them on that side of the ball as well. 215 yards a game allowed, only giving up 6.8 yards per attempt. Completion percentage, 61%. Teams are able to complete it a little bit on them and have some success, but they've been solid. Now, Tennessee hit a ton of big plays. Ty Simpson was really good for Alabama against him. Why am I blanking on his name? Trinidad Chambliss for Ole Miss had a big day through the air, at least in the first three quarters. Kind of fell apart there late. DJ Lagway, I think, left some yards off the field. They hit some big plays in that game, but they also had some opportunities they missed on. There have been opportunities to hit some big plays against the Georgia from here or there. Now, they're pretty good at defending big plays. In fact, that's kind of the biggest thing is they don't give up a lot of them, but some of these teams have managed to find some success. And I think if you're Blake Shapen, it's going to have to be another really efficient day and taking what they give you and marching your way down the field. Because, again, they don't make a lot of they don't give up a ton, even though a few teams have been able to hit some. What's kind of surprising is the pass rush. They are last in the SEC. They only have 8 sacks in the season and 1 sack from a defensive lineman. The 7 sacks from inside linebackers, so not even primary pass rushers. These are guys that they are sending on, blitzes or different pressure looks. They're not getting pressure from their edge guys. They're not getting pressure from the defensive line. It's, Chris Cole, C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, who is a really good trio for them of inside linebackers. Those are kind of like the 3 big names on defense for sure, in the front, defensive front at least. That's sort of it. You don't have the stud on the defensive line that stands out to this point of the season. Jordan Hall leads with 2 tackles for loss. Christian Miller with 1.5. When you talk about defensive linemen, that is. Like they've not been a dominant group up front in terms of being able to get pressure on quarterbacks and in terms of forcing a lot of negative plays. You look from a pass defense standpoint, Dalen Everett is a good corner for them for sure. KJ Bolden at safety is another good player. Like they've got some talented pieces in the back end. It's Georgia, obviously. Jonel Aguero at nickel. It's a good group, but it's not like dominant. It's not the same big names that we've grown used to when we talk about Georgia in terms of the type of pieces that they have back there. It's just a good, solid group that they're able to play with, and they do enough. And, you can convert third downs against them. They're towards the bottom half of the SEC in terms of third down conversions allowed. where they don't force a lot of turnovers. So it's not a lot of negative plays, not a lot of turnovers. You can move the ball against them decently well between the 20s. But what they do well is hold in the red zone. And looking in the SEC specifically in terms of red zone defense, they are second in the SEC, giving up scores on just 72% of red zone trips. They are a little bit further down when it comes to touchdowns allowed at 59%. But again, once they get to the red zone, they find ways to get off the field. It feels like Georgia's going to let Mississippi State nickel and dime. It's whether or not State can win the red zone battle. I think we'll do the keys to victory on Thursday, as we always do. I think the biggest one is which team wins in the red zone. That determines who wins this game.
Yeah, I mean, not to jump to Thursday too quickly, but I mean, you definitely want to hit the big plays early if you're Mississippi State. I would say because once you hit the red zone, man, I feel like that's where Georgia we have seen this year. That is where they thrive defensively is in the red zone. And not to say that they can't prevent explosive plays, but that has been a weakness for Georgia's secondary is just giving up the big passing plays downfield, or maybe if you have the right O line, I mean, you could give up a big run too. So I don't know. There's a lot to dive into as far as the Georgia defense versus the Mississippi State offense. I think it's going to be a fun matchup to watch. Obviously we got our struggles, but the fact that this is not the 21, 22. Even I thought the 2023 defense, or even well, let me say that I thought last year's Georgia defense was pretty solid. 2023, you could kind of see them take some steps back a little bit, but it's it's new, but not so much improved for Georgia defensively right now.
Yeah, but look, as we keep talking about, they find ways to win. And as I mentioned, the other big thing is it's like Kirby has done a really good job of understanding I don't have the same dominant players that I once did. I don't have the same depth that I once did, but I've got a good group, obviously a very talented group. Look, a bunch of those guys in that Georgia defense are going to go be playing on Sundays. I'm sure several of them will be high round picks. It's not like Georgia doesn't have talent anymore. It's just not the same as what they had a few years ago. That's part of the impact of the transfer portal right there is sort of the balancing out of where players are going. But what he has done really well is they've identified what this team is good at. Like, hey, getting pass rush, making a bunch of negative plays, that's not what this team is good at. What we're going to be good at is we're not going to give up the big plays, and we're going to be outstanding in the red zone, and we're going to do a great job of making adjustments in the second half. So even if a team gets up on us early, okay, we figured out what they're doing. Now we can stop them. Honestly, it's a pretty dang good coaching job from Kirby and Glenn Schumann. They have the defense performing as well as they have to this point. So it's going to be a big test for Mississippi State for sure. But look, they went up against a great defense in Texas and had opportunities in that game and put a lot of points on the board, moved the ball well until they didn't at the end. But, against Florida, a very good defense on the road. And I know you only scored 21 points in that game, but State had a bunch of yards and State left a lot of points off the board with some of their missed opportunities. State has actually done pretty well against some of these better defenses that seem to this point. I'm sure Jeff Lebby will have a good game plan in place, and it's going to come down to can you execute in those key moments. And whoever makes the bigger plays in those bigger moments will be who ultimately wins this football game. I know it's very basic, unimpressive analysis, but I think it just holds so true for Mississippi State this year. We'll take a closer look at that game on Thursday because we'll break down our keys to victory. That'll also be our weekly call-in show, so an opportunity for you guys to come be a part of the action. I believe we will do that at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's our general call-in show time. Obviously, we're an hour later than we would typically be, but we just pushed the show back this evening. So that's why we're a little bit later this time around. But, 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Time on Thursday night. We will break down keys to victory and be call-in show opportunity for you guys to come and give your thoughts. And tell us what you think about the Bulldogs versus the Bulldogs. Do you think State's going to make a bowl? All that fun stuff. Appreciate all of you who tuned in. If you haven't already, give us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, share us around, all that fun stuff. Thanks everybody for listening. As always, swing your sword and Hail State.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.